This episode of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast has been brought to you by our sponsors at Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is a PR collective that values people over profit. They put a different spin on public relations by working primarily with friends and using all profits to aid charitable organizations. With a roster that includes Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Brainiac, Get Some, Funeral Date, Damien Dunn, and many more artists, record labels, and podcasts. Sweet Cheetah! That's a great PR cohort. You can find them on social media by simply searching Sweet Cheetah PR, and they'll be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful.
If I'm the curse to win this, I would. If I could to win this, I would.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. And tonight, it's my pleasure to offer to you my conversation with somewhat of a legend, in my opinion. Adel Souto is an urban anthropologist. He is a vocalist. He is a photographer. He is a writer. He is an avant-garde electronic music composer. To take it back to the beginning, he was in Miami's first straight-edge hardcore band, Violent Deed. From there, he moved on to Timescale Zero, while also playing around with power electronics under the name Soul Destruction. Soon thereafter, 156 comes into the world, merging a doom-laden, improvisational, jazz-inspired power electronics / death industrial juggernaut. There's no other way to put it. His written work and photography books all stem from his blog, This Hidden City. Tonight we will be discussing all of this. We're really getting into the reissued, remastered Welcome to the Kali Yuga demo from Timescale Zero, which was brought to us by Damien Moyal's Lore Fanzine. He has a limited edition box set that comes with the demo, the fanzine, a patch, a balaclava, a la the cover of the Welcome to the Kali Yuga demo. We also get into his new book, which will be coming out very soon. And then around the halfway point of the episode, things get really metaphysical, and we start to mine the more esoteric aspects of our collective belief systems. We get to really get a sense of one another. This is less an interview and more a discussion in which two people actually become friends. It's very interesting. It's unique even for this show, which, you know, we get weird on this show. Everybody knows that's the whole point of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast, but this is a special one, folks. And I hope you all really, really dig it. Now we'll get into the part that I seem to get a lot of complaints about, which is, you're going to go out and, beg people to listen to the show, and you shouldn't be doing that. Hey, listen, people, this is my show, right? I want people to listen to it, otherwise why I'm just screaming into the ether. So, like, rate, subscribe, wherever you listen to podcasts. The end. On with the show. Adele and I are together for about 2 hours and some odd minutes. Without further ado, I give to you Adel Souto on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Well, it was interesting. There was like an uncanny valley effect that kind of went on where there were the infinite screens within one another.
I saw that. It said share your screen, and I thought you're supposed to, so I did, and it just I saw it keep flowing. So how are you, Peter?
I'm quite well, sir. How are you?
Good. Very good.
I'm very happy that we finally get to do this.
Same.
We've been talking for a while, and my experience with your music goes back quite a long way via the hardcore scene and tape trading, and now Damien is finally reissuing some of that stuff, which is pretty exciting because everything I have from back then, they were like second generation
bootlegs. I'm sure
bootlegs, and right. My friends in Florida would send me stuff and the like, but you've always found a way to have a creative voice from way back in the 80s all the way up until now, and that's changed a lot for you. What do you think, basically what do you think the start of that was for you, like when you were very young and wanting to present this and find your voice and find a way to call to the void? What was that first thing that sort of what was the tipping point for that?
Well, there were actually two aspects. One is music. So it was my love for the music and not just wanting to listen, but to be a part of it, to actually be involved in creating music, because I loved punk rock, I loved early hardcore. So I didn't just want to slam dance. I didn't just want to like listen to it in my bedroom. I wanted to actually be a part of it. Yeah. And then the other aspect is almost a drive to present other people, to open up a debate with other people with all the interesting information I found. So that was how I started doing fanzines.
Yeah.
Because when I discover something new, I just can't keep it to myself. I want to tell other people, have you heard about this? This is amazing. This is so weird. Everything from different religions, different people, iconoclasts, archaeology, you name it. I just find a lot of these things both mysterious, educational, and I just can't keep it to myself. I want to share it with other people, find other people who are like-minded. And that's the same thing with music. I wanted to find other people who are like-minded. So by joining a band, you get to meet other people in other bands and get to meet other people who like, I love this music. Because it's cool to go to a show and be part of the crowd. You don't get a lot of one-on-one.
Right.
So a lot of times when you're in a band, people will come up to you and they'll be like, dude, I love your music. By the way, have you heard this? Or have you heard that? You get to learn a lot of new music. You meet other bands, or you check out their music. And that's one of the things I love more than anything is conversation, good conversation.
Well, my wife asked me specifically about this. She always asks me, who's on tonight? What are they about? And I tried to explain what you do, Adel, and I said, basically, he's like an urban punk anthropologist, because a lot of what you've really put forward with your blog, which I read voraciously back in the day, your fanzine work. I mean, you explored things from like the Toynbee tiles in New York City, and discovering like just all of the odd and the points of New York City that most people would overlook. And having lived in New York for quite a few years in the early 90s, we would hunt this sort of thing down too, but no one has ever cataloged it in such a succinct manner, with an eye toward what most people would overlook, and also with a love for it. You can
there's
see
definitely a love for it. I don't even care if I'm known for what I do. I'm just happy to actually do it. If there's one thing I loved when I lived in New York, was walk.
Yeah.
Just take a walk around, take a look around, take it in, find new things, find the weird and the hidden about it. And then once I found it, I had, like I said, I had to express it to other people. I had to show other people, look at this amazing, interesting place, or look at this amazing, interesting thing. And that's when I decided to start the This Hidden City blog. And then once I left New York, I realized, wow, I have this huge catalog of information. And, you know, a lot of times blogs are, as wonderful as they can be, they tend to be only as good as how long they're updated. And since I'd left New York, I hadn't updated the blog because I had stopped walking around, and, you know, so I said, well, there's other people who'd probably like to check this stuff out. Maybe they have come across the blog, but they don't want to sit there and scroll through their phone reading all this. A lot of times it's actually easier to read it in a book.
Yeah.
So I said, let me compile everything, as well as do honorable mentions of all the things that I wish I got to see but didn't. So there's just as much stuff in the This Hidden City book of things that I wish I could have seen but missed out on.
Mm-hmm. And what's really a fun ride too, if one were to, you know, go all the way back to your earliest recorded material to now, and, you know, juxtapose that with your writing and all of that, it's an interesting trajectory, because you seem to have completely drawn a line across all that was kind of great about that late 80s, early 90s scene, or scenes plural, really, because with your later work, I mean, we're moving into like a cross between power electronics and death industrial, which I was very passionate about for a long time in my life as well. And then you give us this beautiful 10-inch record right here, which is
thanks.
Pretty much completely done with bones, correct?
Human bones only.
Bones only.
Yeah.
How did you facilitate that?
Actually, I worked back in 2012. I started working at a tattoo studio in Manhattan called Infernum. Basically, the tattoo artist Liorcifer, he was the main artist, and I was the shop manager. Because he's into dark art and things like that, he was Paul Booth. He was Paul Booth's first apprentice.
Oh, wow.
So his artwork has that very similar dark style. So because of that, a lot of people would bring in gifts of human bones. So he had skulls, he had femurs, vertebrae, things like that. So one day I had already started 156. It was basically, and still is, a sort of homage to Neubauten, Crash Worship, Zev, Test Department, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting around at the desk, and I had the femur in my hand, and I'm kind of smacking it against my other hand, and it hit me like, why aren't I doing something with human bones? So I thought about it, and I rummaged it in my head for a while, and I didn't want it to be like a recording about, ooh, spooky and evil, you know, human bones. I wanted it to be something that not only was 156 in sound, but 156 in spirit. And at the time, I was deeply into like the mystical path and meditating and things like that. So I wanted it to be a personal and deeply spiritual record. And one of the things that, at least at the time, that I focused on a lot was death. From doing like Memento Mori to just contemplating like the Ars Moriendi, which is the Renaissance rite of contemplating death, so you could go on and have a happier life. Understanding that one day you're going to die will hopefully at least make you live like a better day. Mm-hmm. Try to do the best with, you know, the time that you have. So I realized that, in these rituals, you're supposed to like focus on a human skull. You're supposed to look at it, meditate on it, contemplate it, understand it. That's what you're going to be one day. And I realized, a lot of people don't have that opportunity. They think buying a human skull is actually rather expensive. Mm-hmm. It's actually gotten a little more popular now, where more and more people collect human remains. So they've actually even gotten more expensive than they were. So I thought, if I use this, people can use it to replace the skull, to play this and meditate on the memento mori, on the ars moriendi, and sort of use it to contemplate trying to understand that our time here is limited, the impermanence of life, and how important it is to live every day to the fullest, have the best possible life while you're here.
And it's like an audio mala beat at that point, because those are supposed to be shaped as skulls. And in the Tibetan
Right.
and in the Tibetan tradition, life is suffering, joyfully, participate in the suffering, and that's what you meditate upon, those beads, and
Yep.
each time that's supposed to, you reckon with death. Therefore, you embrace life because you understand that you are finite on this plane of existence.
Exactly. One of the things that the Tibetans do is they eat from the skull caps as a reminder, as I am feeding myself, but one day I will become worm food myself. Mm-hmm. The Kapala.
To me, I think that rears its head in a lot of different faiths.
Oh yeah.
But I think almost all of it comes back to some form of tribalism or Buddhism, or maybe an amalgamation of the two. But I think that record not only works on that level, but also it's a marriage of what is truly analog, the raw materials of a human being,
right,
and the digital. That's an interesting dichotomy as well. It works on a lot of levels.
I tried to use as little overdubs as possible. I tried to use as little effects as possible, so you can hear the basics of it. There are a few tracks that I did not put on the record that I released later, like the Beehive Suite. Mm-hmm. That's from the Memento Mori sessions, but I didn't put it on the Memento Mori EP. And that one was more like the humming of the breath through the Tibetan kangling, which is a femur trumpet. So those were more noisier tracks, because I did a lot of effects on those, but I didn't want to put that on the record because I wanted more of a raw sound. I did put a little bit of effects, because basically when you play with human bones, no matter how you hit them, you kind of tend to get the same clacking sound. Mm-hmm. So I did do some reworkings here and there, but I tried to give the rawest sound possible. Almost everything was caught on tape. I used I forget the name of it. It was an Akai audio cassette field recorder.
Oh wow!
And it had binaural speakers. So basically, I kept the recorder in a bag, and I would put the two speakers on each side, and then try to get all the sounds that I could. And I realized that I wanted, as authentic sounds as possible. But since they sounded the same, and I didn't want to use that many effects, I did different types of recording. I recorded out in fields. I recorded in my living room. I recorded on subway platforms. Anywhere that I could get a different sound. So there's a lot of that captured in there, from out and about to inside, safely, because, carrying human bones in a bag in Manhattan and Brooklyn is probably not the best idea, but,
yeah.
When you got an idea and you got to do it, you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. But what I find really astounding too is just the breadth of work that you've accomplished in a pretty short period of time, really. I mean, you have so much written work out there for people to lay hands on, and how do you kind of like keep up with all of this?
To be honest with you, I kind of don't know myself. I've actually been asked this. I had some friends who are like, you do quite a lot, and that's just, luckily, that's what's in me, and that's what comes out. I get in moods. I admittedly, like, I haven't recorded a 1/5/6 track in quite some time because I just haven't felt the musical mood. And I fluctuate. Like, lately I've been really heavily gotten back into photography. Then there are times that I'm like, I'm gonna write. I feel like writing. I feel like putting a bunch of stuff down. Then I go back into music, and I fluctuate back and forth. But yeah, it's just because I got a real love and a passion for these things. It just, I don't even know why, other than my previous comments on communicating. Like, a lot of people, they're the same. They like to communicate, but for some reason, it's only musical. It's only through the written word. Or maybe they just communicate through their art or photography or whatnot. I just have this deep passion for some reason for all these projects. Now, admittedly, one problem with this is that, you know the expression, jack of all trades, master of none.
Right. Yeah.
So if you don't focus on one thing, you can't become, I believe, a true professional at that one thing. I'm happy with my output. I think I've done really well. But something tells me that, say, if I focused on writing, who knows, by now I could probably have like a good, like 5 novels under my, especially at my age. I could probably have a few more books under my belt, you know, things like that. I'm happy with what I've done. But there are those times that I'm like, man, I wish I could have just focused on one thing. But then there are other times that I'm like, no, this is what makes me happy. If I want to do music, I'll do music. If I feel like writing, I'll write. If I want to take pictures, I'll take pictures, etc.
See, I always maintained at least 2 to 3 projects throughout my lifetime. I was always in a band. I always did a fanzine of one type or another. And I was always doing graffiti. I mean, that was a big.
Oh, nice.
That was a big thing for me. I was into graffiti, and I skated. I mean, there was always something going on. And of course, with taking into consideration youthful vigor, it makes sense when you're in your teens and early 20s. Mm-hmm. As I approach 50, I still play in a band. Now it's a podcast instead of a fanzine. Plus, you know, my work, and I recently, like within the past 4 years, had another child at my ripe old age, and somehow I feel as though if I didn't have a little bit of chaos, I don't believe I would thrive.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
I'd wondered actually if it were the same for you, if there was just a little bit of chaos helps to grease the wheel.
I wouldn't say chaos for me, but it is that whole, there are a lot of times that I'm sitting on the couch and relaxing, and I feel like I really can't do this. I just can't sit around and do nothing. Now, I'm in a new relationship with somebody that I gel with like I've never gelled with anyone before. So when we're together, sitting on the couch is awesome. It's great to sit there one-on-one. We converse, we laugh, we watch some TV, we make comments and all that, and I love it. But when she's not there and she's at her desk and working, I find that I cannot relax. And it's not like my brain is going and going to where I'm like, I feel that I'm being unproductive. And that's another thing. That's another thing with the memento mori. It's like, why sit around and waste my time when I could be doing something that A, is productive, and B, I actually enjoy. Mm-hmm. I do. Now, don't get me wrong. I do. There are times that sitting down and doing nothing is actually a great thing. It's a stress reliever. It's good to let the mind settle, and that's great. There are times that I do that, but for the most part, it's like, I really love being creative, so let's do something that's creative. and that's just how it flows. So it is in a sense a bit of chaos, especially if I ignore the creative drive. Then I'll start my head will start getting into that rut, and I'll be like, oh, I just can't do this.
But I think like maybe not necessarily chaos may be a bad word for it, but I always felt that within myself, and I believe this with you as well. I'm always at my best when I'm kind of under a bit of pressure.
Oh yeah, no, I do understand that. I can totally understand that. I do sometimes tend to procrastinate. When I set a goal for myself, this is one of the things why I enjoy the way I use social media. A lot of times, I've realized that I've sat on a project for quite some time. The best way to get me going on that project is to announce it.
Yeah.
This will be out in 6 months, or this will be out next year. What better way to start working on it than make everybody expect it? Now you're on the clock. You got to get going.
Yeah.
It's ticking. So yeah, I can understand that, and I do a lot of times find myself working in that way where I'm like, I need to get going, so might as well do a little bit of shit disturbing in my own life to kind of get those wheels spinning. So I can understand that.
That Anton LaVey used to, he had I forget what it was exactly about chronic shit disturbers. It just came to mind. There's something about it. He was a seeker, but I think you're truly a seeker. If one were to look at your output, some of which is behind me, Know-It-All Asshole Jerk is hilarious, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Oh, by the way, since you mentioned Know-It-All Asshole Jerk, the book will be out soon.
I saw that. When is that going to materialize?
It actually should be out October 1st.
Oh, wow.
Both Know-It-All Asshole Jerk and my photo book, Forgotten Rides, which, yep.
That's what I was going to bring up.
The fanzine, that's the wheel edition. The book is going to be like almost 200 photos of abandoned and destroyed bicycles that I've come across throughout New York City. But yeah, them two will be out on October 1st.
The fact that you basically cataloged what becomes of bicycles in New York City, it rang true for me specifically because I lived in Manhattan in the early 90s, and you would see quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And most of the time they were in some state of disrepair, just like this, because the rest of it had been stolen. And whatever the chain had been hooked to was what was left on the sidewalk.
Exactly. One person comes and takes the front wheel. Next person comes, takes the seat, and on and on and on until whatever is whatever is locked up is the only thing that's left. And I'll be 100% honest. It's actually pretty sad because someone probably needed that bike to get to work, get to school. But there it is, presenting itself as its own form of sculpture. And I said, I'm going to capture this. And that's one of the reasons why I loved walking around New York, because it was 3 ideas. Basically, I would walk, in a sense 4, because I would walk to gather information or do a new presentation on this hidden city. And while I was in the area, I would circle around, zigzag through the neighborhood, and I would take pictures of abandoned bikes, graffitied and tagged and stickered up doors. The photo blog I called Doorway Galleries. And lastly, on the subway trips to and from all these areas, you see the advertisements ripped down and stripped, and behind it was all the glue or remnants of past advertisements, and they made this sort of, pastiche of modern art in a sense. Some of them look like Pollock paintings, some of them look like collage work. It was So I started Ad Removal is Modern Art series. And that was actually, the Ad Removal is Modern Art, that was the first photography book that I did. And now I'm doing the Forgotten Rides, the Abandoned Bicycles. And once I decided to take a little break, relax for a little while. Once the Know-It-All Asshole Jerk has gotten out there a little bit, which, by the way, the fanzine is called Know-It-All Asshole Jerk, as is the blog. But the book is going to be called Encyclopedia Obscurum. So once those two books are out in October, I'm going to, relax a little bit and see what the word on the street, what people think about them. And then I'm going to start on my new photo book, which is since 2013, or might have been back to 12, I started photographing battle jackets, punk rock vests and metal vests. I got over 500 photos. I'm like, I'm going to work. This book is going to be huge.
Oh, listen, there's never been a better time in the history of underground music culture to do a photo book on battle jackets.
Probably, yeah. It's gotten really big.
Well, I just recently taken my son and my wife and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law to Hershey Park. And it just so happened that the night we were there, the newly reformed Almost Pantera and Lamb of God were playing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
I didn't know Hershey Park had bands.
Oh, Hershey Stadium. Oh, yeah. I've seen many classic concerts at that specific venue. But there was this huge influx of metalheads walking past, and invariably it's Pennsylvania. I knew a few of them. And my wife my wife's a woman of color, grew up in the Dominican Republic, knows a little bit about underground music, not a ton. She's looking, and she's like, "What's with the jean jackets with the arms cut off and the patches?" I'm like, "That's a battle jacket. I have one upstairs, babe." And we're walking, and I can hear Lamb of God taking the stage, and they're playing something off New American Gospel, and I'm singing along to it. My whole family's kind of staring at me like,
right.
I'm like, you're looking at me like this. You should listen to some of the bands I was in the 90s.
I'm surprised. I would think that they know all of that because of you're introducing them to that stuff.
No, something, the music I make now is so tame, comparatively speaking. I mean, it's just like street punk almost. Just because that's what my best friend wants to play, and I'm involved with that. But they know like T-shirts. Okay, that's something Pete would like, but no idea of it. Really.
Right.
And they're all Christian too, so that's the double whammy.
and now it's actually gone outside of the metal. I've seen pop battle jackets. Mm-hmm. I've seen soft rock and yacht rock battle jackets. You got horror movie battle jackets, anime battle jackets. It really has taken off just outside of the punk and metal circles.
Yeah, it's I wish I understood it making its way past all of that, but if you had told me in 1991 that everyone was going to be walking around with full sleeves and it was going to be completely acceptable, I would have believed you.
I got to agree, yeah. It's like now you meet someone and you'd be surprised if they have no tattoos.
Yeah, absolutely. And furthermore, it takes away that how do I put this? Like recognition from it. Like if you had seen someone back in 1992 with full sleeves and a Minor Threat T-shirt, you're going to be like, oh, one of ours. I could probably go and talk to that guy, and he's going to be cool. Now it could be Kim Kardashian.
Yep.
Because they're
wearing a Nirvana shirt because they thought it was a brand,
right?
Not a band, or a Ramones shirt because they thought it was a brand and not a band.
I saw her sister in a Morbid Angel. Which album was it? I forget now. One Domination, a Morbid Angel Domination T-shirt. And like that, I would love it if you actually listened to that, but I know you didn't, and that's fine. I'm not one of those like name 3 songs people. I don't like those people either. But
right.
It's just
I think there was a photo of Kanye West in an Obituary battle jacket, and I'm positive he did not listen to Obituary.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he doesn't know who John Tardy is. He is
exactly. Take that off. But I get it. It's become part fashion just as much for some people.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm actually kind of okay with it, but the only thing I bemoan is just the fact that I don't know how to spot an ally in public. No.
Yeah, not only that, but I remember back in the early 90s when all the college kids suddenly started wearing Doc Martens.
Mm-hmm.
And after that trend went away, being a part of the scene and someone who always wore Doc Martens, I still wore my Doc Martens. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you the number of times white surfer dudes came up to me and was like, "You still wear those?" I was like, man, yeah, because it's not like I'm not following a fashion trend. These were always like the shoes that I dug, and I like this.
It's funny too, the Doc Marten thing. I remember there was a time when you had to you had to earn them.
I can see that. Yeah,
you had to earn your Docs. At least here where I'm from, with the skinhead population here, you were going to get checked if you were wearing a pair of Docs, and you weren't. If you didn't hold your own.
It was like that in Miami too. It depends which skinheads you came across. Some of them would steal your boots.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even sharps, even the sharps, they'd take your boots off if you.
Yep.
But I don't want my kid growing up like that, and I have a feeling he is going to have the same proclivities that I do as far as music and literature and film are concerned.
Right.
I don't want him to go through what you and I had gone through.
I think it's changed. I really think it's changed. I think. I don't know. For some reason, I believe there's there's always going to be assholes, no matter what. Right. I think it was Stanford University. Some kids did. I don't know if you're familiar with the turtle test.
Yeah.
They made a robot turtle and they had it cross the street, and they found out that 6% of people will purposely steer towards the turtle to kill it. So, in other words, no matter what, 6% of whatever group you're in is probably an asshole.
Yeah.
So sure, there are always going to be assholes, but I think that there's also just as many people who are part of the scene and part of groups that are vigilant about helping others and protecting others. I really believe that times have changed to the point where more people are looking out for one another. So something tells me that while it'll still happen every now and again, it won't be as prevalent as it used to be.
Oh, yeah, because in all reality, in those days, people were starting to get into the whole PC of it all in the hardcore scene. But it wasn't a majority thing by any stretch.
Right.
And even, in the straight edge scene, which I was never straight edge, but most of my friends were. And the straight edge vegan scene had people who were so militant. They were militantly Christian as well, and homophobic. And I never understood that either. The whole hard line, treating the straight edge X as almost 4 hatch marks away from a swastika.
Right. I got to admit, I actually almost got there.
Really?
A lot of people don't know. They think Timescale Zero was my first band. Before Timescale Zero, I was in Miami's first straight edge band, Violent Deed.
Yep.
And there came a time where towards the end where it started getting a little cartoonish about being straight edge. And just as quickly as, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with the band, but basically half of it went on to Powerhouse.
Oh, that's right.
You remember the band Powerhouse?
Yeah.
And once Violent Deed broke up, I kind of just gave up on straight edge altogether. I don't know if I was doing it just for the band, but there was a time that I actually did believe in it. But pretty much once the band was over, I gave up on straight edge. But that's kind of where it was going, especially because you remember Project X?
Oh, very well, yeah.
That 7-inch became huge, so everybody started leaning a little more and a little more. And then about a year after, maybe it was more like a year and a half after Violent Deed broke up, you started getting bands like Vegan Reich and stuff like that.
Green Rage, Vegan Reich.
It was really like hilarious. And it's funny because now, South Florida has a connection to Vegan Reich because Ray, him and his mom used to put on shows. They're the ones that brought down bands like Youth of Today. I think they brought down Gorilla Biscuits and quite a number of bands. And they actually had Violent Deed open up for Youth of Today in one of their last U.S. shows before they broke up and reformed. Mm-hmm. I think this was 88, maybe early 89. I don't remember. That's the problem with age. You just start forgetting. But Ray, he went on to play drums for Vegan Reich, and I was like, I don't believe that. That's crazy. So,
the Declaration of War song, like, oh my god. There were aspects of the whole hardline thing that, like, musically I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I don't think any of those people realized that the Project X 7-inch was they meant for it to be cartoonish,
almost tongue in cheek.
Yeah. I mean, it was one step away from Crucial Youth. Now, Crucial Youth I could get behind because they were
yeah.
Stay straight, bend your weight, and please don't masturbate.
See, that's the problem with a lot of different things. A lot of people mistake the map for the territory. Mm-hmm. They don't same thing with, say, like a lot of noise music. You had people like Throbbing Gristle who were not fascists at all. They were actually very left-leaning, mm-hmm. but they used fascist iconography.
Yeah. Because it was shocking to a lot of people. A lot of people started taking that fascism and Nazism to heart, and now you've got a shitload of noise music that is totally geared to right-wing politics and stuff like that. And it's just like, you guys actually didn't understand how it started and why it started, and you guys saw all these symbols and decided to put your arm at a 45 degree because your favorite record had like a 3-pronged swastika. But like Douglas Pierce didn't even believe that shit. That's the part they don't understand. Like, are Leibach fascists? No.
Exactly. If anything, Leibach was the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
One of their earliest works, and I forget the artist's name, but it's the infamous picture of the dead body wrapped around the swastika. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of meaning behind that, meaning, the death and the death toll behind fascism.
Yeah.
But a lot of people took it completely the other way. They see the imagery they use, the marching boots, and I don't know how it became, some of the things that they used became symbols for fascism, like a stag deer. Mm-hmm. And, drums, boots. I could kind of understand boots.
Yeah, the jack boots make sense, but like in all, like what it all had basically gotten to was, you could basically show any sort of icon that people could think of as being martial in scope, and they will glom onto it and make it a fascistic symbol. But
especially if it has symmetry.
I don't know.
Don't know why.
The German pop art thing, there's a lot of symmetry involved there.
I can see that.
But also in noise music, there was the proclivity for, things that like harming children was.
Yeah, a lot of taboo subjects. White House with the degradation of women. Stuff like that.
And Peter Sotos being in White House for a time. I mean,
Yep.
that guy he's something. He's a bird of a different color. But even him, I don't know how much of that is them trying to glorify this thing, or are they trying to show it to the world like as the big dirty thing, the big dirty secret that everyone hides, behind their back door. Like, this is what's really going on in homes across the world. Wake up. But I think through noise music is pretty extreme, but I think that became a hotbed of some pretty radically disgusting ideas, and not, as a commentary, but as like, yeah, we're into this.
As a worship. Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead of understanding, either using it for shock value or using it as a tool to expose some of these things, they went outright to like from worshiping. Like, that's another thing. Like, that's one thing people mistake 156's Memento Mori as. It's not death worship. It's something different, and they're going to hear, oh, human bones, hell yeah, and get the completely wrong idea. And that's, like I said, people who mistake the map for the territory.
But the message, to me, the message is in the title.
You'd think so. A lot of times, this stuff is flat out obvious, and I don't know how they've taken it and warped it, and in their heads, it doesn't mean that. They take the symbols at face value. And that's the problem with I wouldn't say a lot of people. That's the problem with some people, is that they don't bother looking to see what's behind something. Everything to them is face value, and that's it. Whatever is expressed in symbol, not lyric, not the meaning behind it, not the concept behind it. It's just that symbol means this, therefore I am now this too.
And that's frightening, because once you remove nuance, art slowly gets phased out. Things stop becoming art and start becoming didactic.
I got to agree, especially a lot of contemporary art has become that, where you don't like. Now there's a lot of people who are just basically scribbling words on a canvas, and that's it. That's their art. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen canvases that just say "fuck you" or "this is art," and it's like it took them less than 5 minutes to create it, because there is no art to it. It's, to them, it's just symbol.
That's the antithesis of art. In my
exactly.
opinion. I mean, like, that. What are you truly expressing with that? And I think that's why I didn't abandon hardcore or punk by any stretch of the imagination, but I certainly expanded the territory for myself at a very, very early age, because I didn't start with punk. I started with pop music, like most people do.
Of course, yeah.
Until my dad took me to see The Who with the Clash opening when I was
very cool,
very young, and it changed my mind about a lot of things. But still, I was already listening to The Cure because they were on the radio. I was, like, Depeche Mode was already on the radio, so I already had a taste for electronic music.
Yeah, that's what early MTV was.
Yeah,
they didn't have a lot of videos to play, so they played a hell of a lot of The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and different punk, early Clash and stuff like that. So that was a great way to get into that stuff. But anyhow, you were saying about.
But that's why I discovered. That's how I discovered things that went outside of just the very myopic scope of hardcore or nothing else.
Right.
And especially finding industrial music in the 80s was a big deal for me, and falling into that rabbit hole, because Land of Rape and Honey, I think, is as much of a punk rock record as London Calling, as
I could see that.
My War. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a complete and utter abandon for form,
right?
Because doesn't follow any specific map. I don't think Al Jurgensen was really trying to sound like anyone at that point. I would argue he was definitely trying to sound like someone with Sympathy.
Yeah, I totally believe so. I think he was with Sympathy. He was copying, and he just wanted to make music like others made.
Mm-hmm.
But then he started to create his own sound. I think at the very tail end of the Twitch album, I forget the name of the song, but it's basically the last song.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear towards the end what later became the Land of Rape and Honey album, and I have to say that yeah, he basically started industrial metal. If it wasn't for him, who knows how long it would have taken to like mix those genres. But he basically created that himself, definitely. And I'm sure there was a lot of influences that steered him in these directions.
Minor Threat is one of them, believe it or not.
Oh, definitely. That's because that's why he did Palehead.
Yeah.
But that's you gotta give it to him at least. Like I'd have to say that Contemporary Ministry is not all that great.
No, it's not.
But you got to hand it to him. He's the granddaddy of that whole thing.
Absolutely,
and I'll thank Al for that for sure, because I do love that. And, Skinny Puppy then started going that route with Tin Omen and stuff like that, and then just came a slew of copycats.
Yeah, sadly, but I think Skinny Puppy probably did it best. Too Dark Park is genuinely one of the most creepy albums I've ever heard in my entire life.
Great record, yeah.
Oh my God, is it phenomenal? But what you do does not sound like Skinny Puppy, but the mood is very adjacent.
I can see that. I mean, for a long time, Skinny Puppy was one of my favorite bands. That's one of the funny things is I was in the hardcore scene, but you know how you said you grew up with pop music?
Yeah.
Living in Miami, I grew up with dance music.
Oh, freestyle was big then, I'm sure.
A lot of freestyle. So I grew up house parties and stuff where they were spinning stuff like Bobby O records and, sometimes even some Planet Patrol and things like that. So I love to dance.
Yeah.
So I loved punk rock and got into that, but at the same time, I gave just as much attention to stuff like Skinny Puppy and stuff because I loved its danceability.
Oh yeah.
So
it makes sense.
So while 156 doesn't sound like that, I have to say that there is a sliver of influence there.
Now, growing up around that, like with freestyle and things of that nature in Miami, was there a lot of like Afro-Cuban influence in the neighborhood you grew up in as far as music and culture? Yeah,
I mean, I'm Cuban.
I for some reason I thought your last name was Portuguese. I don't know why I thought that.
Well, actually, Souto is from a section of Spain that's just above Portugal.
Oh, okay.
And my dad is Galician, and Gallegos are from extreme northern Portugal and extreme western Spain. So Soto is both Spanish and Portuguese.
Okay, I knew someone else with the last name and they were Portuguese. That's why I assumed that. But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
So my mother is Cuban. My father is a Spaniard. I was born in Cuba. After we left Cuba, we moved to Spain, and then we came here to the U.S. And so, yeah, there's a big experience, the Cuban culture and stuff like that. So it's definitely been in my life for quite some time, for quite a while. Yes.
No, I was wondering, did they flee because of Castro?
Oh, definitely.
I'd assumed as much. That era must have been absolutely intense. Just in retrospect, you probably don't remember much of it, though, do you?
I do not. My mom has told me stories. She grew up when Castro was just starting to take power. She went to school. She had to learn like Communist Manifesto and things like that. In all honesty, my dad, being a Spaniard, I have no idea why he chose to go live in Cuba, especially after my father was jailed for, I forget how long. It may have been almost a year, because he refused to work. Because you have to have a job.
Yeah.
And he refused to work, so they locked him up for that. And instead of leaving, he stayed, and then he met my mom, and good on him. But so after some time, since he's a Spanish citizen, he said, it's just getting more and more to be a dictatorship. It's getting worse and worse. And we left Cuba in, I believe, 1974. I was born in 69, left in 74, went to Spain, and then a little bit after we got there, Franco stepped down from power, and my dad, I have no idea what went through his head, but he said, I don't know what's going to happen to Spain, so we're out of here for greener pastures.
That's heavy. I mean, having grown, like, number one, being who I was involved in the things I was involved with, I read the Communist Manifesto when I was 12 years old. And, in my mind, I was like, this is Karl Marx. Yes, this is the way I want to live my life. I still have some warm feelings for some of the ideas, but Cuba never used it. I mean, they preached it. But
not correctly, that's for sure. Oh man, what is the word I'm looking for? They nationalized a lot of the businesses.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the most social things that they did. But yeah, there's a lot of socialism that did, a lot of the tenets of socialism that they did not, I'm sure they believed in it, but they did not go through with it.
Yeah, and I think there was a time probably when Castro had, altruistic intentions, but I believe the same of Barack Obama. And then a few years into his tenure, went to Flint, Michigan, and pulled a stunt saying, "Oh no, just give me tap water and I lost all faith in the man, sadly, and I voted for him twice. He was, I thought he was going to change everything. But yeah, as a kid, I would read books like Utopia and the Communist Manifesto and think to myself, like, wow, if we could just get to this, we'd be all right. But it seems to me, though, that every time it's been put into practice by Russia, by Cuba, by China, it becomes fascism. And
because, like they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. These people may have believed in it, but once they got into power, they realized they had to hold on to power. And what other way are you going to hold on to power other than with an iron fist? That's why Castro had Che Guevara killed.
Yeah.
That's why he had Cienfuegos killed. That's why he had a bunch of his compatriots killed, because he realized these people are actually getting more popular than me, and there's a good chance that they might take power from me.
Yeah.
And I want to stay in power. And that's when a lot of these political systems with good intentions become dictatorships. When the people in power realize, hey, I might actually lose power.
We almost saw it here.
Exactly. January 6th was that. A person who saw himself losing power and said, I have to do something to get that power back.
Mm-hmm. And sadly, he's still a threat, in my opinion.
Very much so. Very much so.
The indictments, I think, they're straw dogs. They're not threatening to him. I don't think they would do anything if he were indicted.
I have to agree. I believe that even if they found him guilty and all that, it's not gonna take any serious toll on him, because to the rest of the world, America has to give a certain image. Imagine an America that puts one of its ex-presidents in jail or under some type of, having to face consequences for these actions. It will make us look worse than we already look. And America can't have that.
Yeah, I know.
So he's probably going to get away with a lot of this stuff. And I wouldn't doubt if they're doing some of this just for show.
I think it is a show. I think it is pageantry at its absolute worst, because they're trying to calm down people like us, who want justice, who want to see this criminal be treated like a criminal.
Agreed, yeah.
But if they do it, then, we already look incredibly weak. I truly do not believe that Putin would have pulled what he'd pulled had there been a strong president in place.
Agreed, yeah. Agreed.
So they put Mr. Biden in, and he he does not have all of his faculties currently, I don't think.
It's sadly but true, yeah.
And I have nothing against him. He is from my hometown. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of our own. He's too old to do the job correctly and with vigor. I don't know why we never considered, when writing the rules of presidency, you had to be 35 years old to be eligible.
Let's do an age cap, please.
Age cap. And for the two things that I really wish they would change is like an age cap for presidency and term limits for congressmen. Like, you know what I'm?
Definitely.
You just in there indefinitely?
It's what is it called? A geneocracy, when you have a gentrocracy, when it's all, everyone's a geriocracy. Geriocracy, that's it.
Yeah.
Just old people running everything.
I'd like to see a president in his early 40s, or her early 40s, or their early 40s. Someone who's abreast of the way things are actually moving in this country, and have, an idea of culture, and, understand the youth a bit more.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. Somebody who understands, most of America right now are of a certain age, somewhere between 25 and 45.
Mm.
And you're not going to understand what those people are thinking. I mean, you could try, but in all honesty, you're not going to understand what those people are thinking when you are in your 80s.
Yeah, you're almost great-grandfather territory at that point. Great-grandmother territory. You're supposed to be giving us stale cookies and candy that's been sitting in like a medicine cabinet for 85 years.
All stuck together in a dish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not saying just retire yourself and go lay down and die. Far from it.
Be helpful. Be part of the system. Just don't run it.
Yeah, your time has come and gone. I mean, and sadly, what all of them are in place for is to make money, and they're all rich. They're all rich. I have nothing against people making money for themselves, but when you have millionaires to billionaires in charge of absolutely everything, who do you think they're going to side with? Their own.
And I think right now there's, 20 times more billionaires than there were in the 1980s. And I understand, some of them do contribute to philanthropic groups and things like that. But when does enough become enough? Now, while I lean towards the left, I'm not the type of person that believes, everyone should have a cap on how much they can make, or once you make a certain amount, it's got to be distributed to everyone else. I understand, but I one thing I don't understand is the mentality of wanting not just more, but so much more. It's like you could be doing amazing, amazing things with this money. You could be helping the world in such great ways where you who knows, some of the things that these people could do, we might build statues of them for future generations to go, this great man. But no, I'd rather buy a social media platform and
Elon Musk legitimately, he has enough money to wipe out world hunger completely and be okay. He's not going to do it.
Rather go do an MMA fight with another billionaire. Something I seriously, talk about bread and circuses.
Yeah.
That whole fight between them two. I don't understand what the hell all that's about.
It's a big dick contest.
It's like I said, bread and circuses. The only difference is that now they're smart enough not to give us bread because they know that we'll buy it.
Yep. And that guy's all he's trying to do, is just. People think that he's building spaceships to try and get off world because we've destroyed the Earth. We have destroyed the Earth, but that's not why he's trying to get off world. He's trying to get the mineral rights to different planets in our solar system. Because
I didn't know that, but
yeah.
I completely believe it. I don't see why not. Just another way to make more money.
That's what it is. I mean, for all of the conscientiousness that you think would be bred into people with higher educations and premium educations, they still shit where they eat. And that is, a dog won't fucking do that. Why are you doing this?
if you have that much money and are constantly, your goal is to make even more, then of course that's going to be their goal. That's where we're headed. That's where they're headed, because that's it. They just want to be making more. Like you said, it's a dick measuring contest. It's like, I got this many more billions than you. I mean, when it comes down to it, besides like Forbes magazine, does it really matter? After you have a certain amount of money, does it really matter how many more billions you have than someone else? But in that group, yeah, I guess it does.
I'll never fully understand it because I've never been rich, I guess. Maybe if I had a 25 to 50 million in the bank, I'd understand going, well, why isn't it 200 million? How do I make it to 800 million?
I could see that, but at the same time, I think most of us would be happy with a certain amount just to live comfortably, just so long as we can live happily. And these people have way more than they need to live comfortably. Someone tells me that with your mindset, even if you had that much money, I think you'd still have the values that you currently have. And you would not understand that grasp for such extreme wealth.
I hope so. And I think
I guess, it's one of those you'll never know till you get there.
Right. And I'm not going to get there. And if I do, I'll tell you all about it. But I sincerely don't believe
it.
But what I wanted to ask in the beginning and neglected to, when I was talking about your tipping point, where when everything kind of started for you with your interest for music, who or what group of whom's were your introduction to All Music Left of the Dial? What was that first love, that first taste of something other musically?
In all honesty, besides a very small handful of friends, just record store shopping and having a record store that let you play the records to hear it.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. So I had especially two friends, Jairo and Diego. I basically would go to their house and they had a decent record collection, and they let me flip through there. And what does this sound like? What does this sound like? So there was that, and then going to this little record store called Yesterday and Today, and same thing, flipping through the records, going, this cover looks really cool. What does this sound like? Being able to go to the record player, and they wouldn't let you just play it because you'd probably scratch all the vinyl. You know, they give it to the guy, he'd put it on, and you'd go, okay, this is cool, or nah, next record. Mm-hmm. So luckily I had those two avenues. And I would say that those two, and then thirdly was a radio show called Off the Beaten Path with host Bob Slade. He played amazing punk rock and a handful of dance industrial. And it was Monday nights at midnight to 2 or maybe 3 in the morning. And I'd tune in every Monday night, listen in, and that it hipped me to a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, I got to see a lot of shows thanks to him, because every Monday night he'd give away tickets for shows, and me and my best friend would sit there with speed dial, going in, trying to win the tickets. So finally, about I'd say 6 months into it, I wound up meeting him at a show, and I said, "Hi, I'm Adel." He goes, "Adel Souto? You're banned from my show. You take all the tickets all the time." I just laughed it off and was like, "That's cool. I understand."
But was there a record that kind of infected you first, like?
I think MDC's Millions of Dead Cops, that record really blew my mind. It wasn't just cool punk. It was so deeply social and political that it really started influencing me, steering me to you know, a completely different lifestyle that I wasn't aware of. You know, going to a lot of house parties, I have to admit something kind of embarrassing. The Latin people I grew up with were unbelievably homophobic.
Yeah.
Which is strange, because when you listen to a lot of the music they were playing, I think it's Laszlo's "Hey Guy," that's a gay anthem.
Yeah.
Bobby O, he produced a lot of records for Divine.
Yeah. And
Divine sang a lot of gay anthems. A lot of these songs were gay dance floor classics, yet it was really strong homophobia in the Latin community. But then I hear MDC, and he's expressing, you know, he's very open with his gayness. He's very open with his hatred towards cops. He's very open with his hatred towards the Klan. And that's when I started realizing, yeah, man, there's a lot of this system that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And things need to change. And that was another thing. It wasn't just like, holy crap, things are screwed up. That record showed me that, yeah, things are screwed up. Do something about it. Don't just sit there and listen to music. Get political. Do something. So it both influenced me to do something, as well as, you know, open my mind to a different avenue of music.
I think that album is going to continually find life too. I mean, very, very recently, when Trump was first running, Green Day resurrected like MDC lyrics and turned.
Oh, really?
Dance. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, man. I mean, somehow that record continually finds impetus. I mean, no cops, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Yeah. Okay.
Green Day started chanting that at a Democratic rally.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know.
It became like a chant that people who definitely don't know who the fuck MDC are chanting along. I'm like, when I was 12 and listening to that record, again, I would never have imagined being in my 40s and that yuppie asshole that I hated when I was a kid is running for president, and people are chanting MDC lyrics against him. It was like so much had come for full circle in that moment for me. It was more than deja vu. It was like an uncanny valley, like I'd said before.
It actually is almost full circle, and every time the circle comes back around, it gets a little crazier, a little more extreme. Because I remember in the '80s, one of the biggest, the biggest enemy was Ronald Reagan. And what was Ronald Reagan? He was an actor. And that's who won the presidency, a guy who used to do movies with a chimp.
Yeah.
And it came back around, and what did we get? We got a president that was a reality TV show star. So it's wild, and hopefully we can find our way out of these ruts if most of America could get their head out of their ass and realize to like that graffiti art. What is it? Stop making stupid people famous.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that will become true sometime. But the way reality TV and all that works, I'm not filled with a lot of hope.
Well, we witnessed the death. I witnessed the birth and death of MTV before I was like 40.
Very true.
And so much so much reverence for art has died in the past 20 years or so. It makes sense that fascism has become popular because free thought has become anathema to, the average Joe.
Right.
I don't know what happened to these people who grew up in the 60s. My parents' age group who, my mom was a hippie. My mom went to Woodstock. My mom's still a liberal, but so many people in her age group who were into the same things and believed the same things she did when they were teenagers are now
became yuppies.
They became
a lot of them became yuppies.
But even worse yet, a lot of them never found any upward mobility financially, but are still championing this evil oligarch. and they fully believe, like I've heard this said by people in that age group who, sadly, I work with two people who are in that age group, and it's only sad because of their predilections. He's like Kennedy. He's for the people. Now, Kennedy did not want the Vietnam War and was friends with Martin Luther King and was a proponent for the civil rights movement. Trump wanted the Central Park 5 drawn and quartered. I remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
Tell me where the similarity lies. They're both from wealthy families.
Go figure.
It ends there. It ends exactly there. I will never see the value in a hate monger ever. The only thing there is that they're entertaining at parties, maybe because you get to laugh at them. Like, look at this asshole; he's going to say something crazy.
I'll never understand how we got to be where we are, is other than, quite frankly, the dumbing down of society. It's like, people joked that, Jerry Springer, terrible television, but you got to admit there was this sort of there's a bizarre fascination there where you're like, look at this circus.
Yeah, it's the Grand Guignol, You're watching, the grand pageantry of death on a daily basis. We like the 24-hour news cycle is a big part of it too. Indoctrination, inculcation via, your neon god, the television, and whatever channel you tend to land on, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they're all pushing a very, very obvious agenda.
Of course, yeah.
You cannot even watch like television shows like The View, for example, which used to be a talk show run by women. There'd be, actors, musicians, whatever. They would all talk to them. Now it is all politics all the time.
Right.
I have nothing against their views on politics because they're all very left-leaning. I have nothing against that. What I have something against is the constant barrage of opinion.
One thing I did recently, not very recently, but I'd say like about 6 months ago, I decided to, while still keeping in touch with friends, while still being a part of, say, like social media and certain things, I decided to drop out of the news cycle.
I did a long time ago. Yeah.
I decided to not, I know where my heart is. I know where my politics lie. I don't need a constant debate of politics to go on to listen to steer me to anything. So I decided to cut all of that out. And I have to say that my stress level has really dropped, has really helped. There are certain clowns, and I know you know who they are, the funny blonde lady, the Jewish space lasers, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have not heard any of these people's names. The lying Republican from New York, all these people, I have not heard any of their names in the longest time, and I'm so happy. My life has become so much better. I know where I stand. I know where my politics lies, so I don't understand why people need this constant backup of their ideas. It's like, don't you know who you are? Why do you need this 24-hour cycle of a reminder? Hey, don't forget, you're this, you're that, these are your talking points, and this is what you stand for. You should already know all this stuff. So I dropped out of that, and my life has become so no, I wouldn't say stress-free, but it has become much, much less stressful. I feel so much better since dropping out of that. I pay very little attention to politics now. I know enough to know what's going on. Who's going to run for president? Who's going to run for my state senate? Who do I need to vote for? End of story. I don't need to know anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm not even a Democrat, but I at least understand to vote for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
I would love to have a candidate that is going to stand for what I believe in, who believes in all the ideals that I stand for. But until that guy starts running, I have the choice that I'm left with is at least voting for the lesser of two evils. And it's sad, but what else are you gonna do? You're gonna let the bad guys win? You're gonna let the people you really hate win? You gotta at least, if you're moving 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're still making it 1 step up.
Yeah.
Better than constantly going backwards. So it's not great, but it's what's happening right now. I would love to change it. I've tried to change it. I do what I can. I state I make political bumper stickers. I stick them up. I do my part. I try to change people's mind.
Got one right here.
That's right. They got us fighting a culture war to prevent us from starting, a class war.
Yeah.
And that is 100% true. And I try to do what I can, but I'm not going to be a part of the cycle where I have to get involved in debates, because a lot of times you're not. When it comes down to it, if someone does not fully believe in what they believe in, you can tell, because they're not going to argue with you and give you a chance to hear you out. And when you get that in, sure, let's talk. Let's have a nice discussion. But once it turns into an argument, that's someone you're not going to change their mind.
Nope.
If they want to argue, that's what they're there for. They're there to argue. I don't want to be a part of that. So I'm not going to fall into that cycle. So I will be political. I know my beliefs, but leave me out of this whole thing.
Yeah, because the only thing you're missing out on is circular rhetoric on both sides. And, when I was a big Bernie fan, and there's a part of me that still likes him.
Same here, yeah.
But I knew he didn't have a chance in hell.
Oh, yeah.
He's too radical for the left, because the left, they call themselves liberals, but to me, they're not.
They're neoliberals. They're not even left. They're center, slightly left, maybe, but they're definitely not left.
Here's the thing that infuriates me about them is they legitimately cut off their own noses to spite their faces constantly.
Oh, yeah.
By, rallying against causes that really make no sense for the left. And I see it time and time again. I understand a need for, let's say, gun control, which is a big liberal talking point. And I get that. And mass shootings speak for themselves. But to call for the wholesale disarmament of all people in this country that's not a very liberal mindset, for one thing, because as long as the U.S. government has guns and the police have guns, if you have none, guess what, buddy? They already have you. I'm not saying we should all be armed to the teeth, because there are people who certainly should not possess firepower. But it's not a bad idea to protect yourself either.
Listen, I like guns.
I do too.
I own guns.
I do too.
I have no problem with guns.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe in gun control. I believe that there should be a waiting period, and a lot of that stuff is in effect. But then you have, some of the skirting of laws that you can do in this country to obtain guns or more guns than you need. That's unnecessary. I understand and believe in gun control. In outlawing guns, that's insane. That's wrong. You know?
But I think my point, like, as much as I've enjoyed a lot of Michael Moore's films, and I think he's on the right track with a lot of things. He's one of these people that after Columbine, he wants the wholesale cancellation of every man's rights to defend themselves.
Right.
I have a very serious problem with that for the reason I just stated. If we can't protect ourselves, guess what, folks? We lost already. The plot is lost. We're not America anymore. We are a dictatorship. Period.
Like we were talking about Fidel Castro earlier, one of the things that he did when he got into power was take the guns away from all the farmers, because if anybody is going to understand a people's revolution, it was him. So he knew the best way to stop a people's revolution is to take away what they can revolt with, because we are way past the age where pitchforks and torches are going to work. Yeah.
And there's another way to completely stomp out the embers of a revolution, and that is to imbue complacency into the people of your nation. Hence, what is happening in this country right now.
That's why I mentioned bread and circuses earlier. A lot of what we see going on is a circus, and it's meant to be a circus to take your mind away from what's really important. Living a good life, taking care of yourself, those you love, and your community. So, and instead, go ahead.
No, continue, because I have something to add to that. So please continue.
Oh, and they just got everybody focusing on the wrong thing. That's all. Everyone is looking in the wrong place for what they need to live a better life.
And a big part of me was very excited when the UFO hearings took place, because to me, it's only common sense that life on other planets and in other dimensions exist, and UFOs exist. I'm sure of it.
I agree 100%. I mean,
Do I think that those hearings were meant to distract us from something? Fuck yes.
Quite possibly, yeah. Quite possibly. I in all honesty, I didn't. Like I said, I kind of dropped out of the news cycle, so I had heard about it and I read up a little bit about it. But the truth is, I'm like I said about liking the weird and being into the weird. I was already familiar with Grosh and everything he said on the stand. I already had heard what he had said before. I was familiar with him, and a lot of there was nothing, at least new to me, that was, from what I've read, nothing new to me that was said there. So you're quite right. It might have been done all as some type of spectacle. But like the head of the CIA said, we have to finally admit, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, we basically have to finally admit that, yes, UFOs are real. What's manning them is what we don't know. Are they from another country? Are they from elsewhere? We have no idea. But we'll admit, yeah, there are objects flying around right now that we do not understand.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think that, as you said, I was already familiar with just about everything that was spoken of too, but I think the boon of it all was the pageant, the like making like, oh, we're finally pulling the veil back, and they gave us next to nothing for the initiated. Nothing, we learned nothing new. It was just basically, okay, shucks, I admit it, right?
But yeah, you do have to wonder, why did they do that? What is the end goal?
And what were they hiding? What were they misdirecting? They were showing us this, something really big's over here.
That's what I said about the whole MMA fight between these rich boys. It's like, I have a feeling something's gonna slide by because people are focusing on this idiocy. So something that they don't want us to look at is gonna be happening elsewhere. And I had commented about that because right now, yeah, we're living in the society of the spectacle. There's a lot of stuff going on where the focus is not on anything that's truly important. So it's quite possible that yes, they are doing this because there's something else that they don't want us to know about it. I guess those of us who keep our ear to the ground, I guess we'll find out about it soon enough.
Bearing all that in mind, though, if you're at all familiar with my show, I have one question that I ask everyone.
I think I know what it is.
Hit me with it.
What is my existential fear?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I talk about this every so often, and something tells me you're gonna hate my answer. I really don't know.
That's awesome.
I really don't know. Like I said, around the time that I started the Memento Mori, I had focused on death. So I did a lot of meditation on death. I purposely thought about it. I've even taken mushrooms and have purposely, while I was tripping, thought about my death. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to freak out. Guess what? I did not care. I was like, wow, like my heart isn't even racing. I just accepted it like whatever. There are times, I admit, I have slight anxiety about my girlfriend passing because she's become extremely important to me. Like I said earlier, I finally, after years, have found someone that I have gelled with unlike anyone ever before. We are truly two people who were meant to meet and share ideas. And I'm lucky enough to not just do that, but get to be in a loving relationship. Every once in a while, I think of like losing that, and there's some dread there. But I have to say that that's about it. It doesn't really fill me with fear. I understand that that's a cycle of life, and I'm going to face it, and that's sucks, but that's what's going to happen.
I envy that because most of what drives most people is rooted somewhere in fear or anxiety, but mostly like true existential fear is
Right.
it drives so much of the of humanity in general. And as we've learned throughout millennia, anything driven by fear is most likely toxic. But that's human, right? But that tells me that's why I don't hate your answer. You've obviously reached some sort of plateau spiritually and intellectually that you've accepted all of the things that you would have found dreadful existentially. So I mean, I applaud it. I don't hate it at all. I think that's great.
It was. I used to be involved in the occult and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and after a couple of years, I kind of like steered away from it. I still like read up on it and stuff, but I basically steered away from it to be less about witchcraft and magic and more about mysticism. I was extremely interested in like the Agartha of India, people who sit there in graveyards and cover themselves with ash. Why did they leave society to devote their lives to stuff like this? And so I decided to do some of that myself. I did experiments, and I decided when I turned 40 years old, I said, I'm going to do a 5-year ritual, and I'm going to do experiments, and these experiments are going to get harder and harder, more, they're going to get greater and greater, and I'm going to learn more about myself than I could ever imagine. And it truly worked. I did everything from a 30-day vow of silence to, for 5 years, I was not allowed to say no. You asked me for a favor, you got it. You need something, here it is. Let me tell you something. People used me. It got to the point where like once a week someone would call me up, I'm moving, can you help me move? Yes. Even if I didn't want to, gotta go with it. I learned how to be humble. I've learned how to care for others more than myself. I decided to meditate. I did extreme fasts, including water, where I didn't drink a drop of water for 2 days.
Ooh.
I learned, and I don't know if you might be familiar with my output.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't know my personal life. I was homeless for like over a year. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to be thirsty. But that was an early 20-something guy that went through that. He struggled to survive. I needed, I almost forgot what that was all about, what that was like. So I decided to put myself through all that again to sort of restructure, rebuild, and reset myself. And boy, did I do it, because I had an unbelievable awakening, and it completely changed me as a human being. I used to have anger issues. I used to have hang-ups. Like the silliest, most unbelievable things would trigger disgust in me or would piss me off. And after all this was over, I don't know how it happened, but it was all gone. And one of the things I even lost was my alcoholism. I used to sometimes drink till I blacked out. I haven't had a drink since 2013. And not only have I not had a drink since 2013, I haven't even had the desire to have a drink. It completely left, and I don't know how it happened, but it's gone. I've never said, something, I kind of want to, I haven't had alcohol in a while. I think I'm going to have a sip. It's just not there anymore. I went from being a person that would stumble home drunk almost nightly to suddenly just like finding myself completely losing the taste or desire for alcohol. And I did it. I forced myself to become a different person, and it worked. And that's why I believe that I lost a lot of these fears, because I was a person. One thing I'll admit, I like pot. I used to not only drink a lot, but I used to smoke a lot of pot. I don't smoke pot right now only because of my job, because they do random drug tests, and I have a very good paying job. I don't want to lose it, so I'm going to walk the path of the straight and narrow. But if it were up to me, yeah, I'd like to smoke. I wouldn't mind. But there was a time where I wanted this. I needed this. And now it's like I'm at the point where it's like I don't care. I can take it, if I want to, but I choose not to. And I just, like I said, I was a very angry, very toxic person, and I decided this is going to shorten my life. I took a test to see what type of personality I had, and according to it said I should have died a long time ago from smoking cigarettes and being stressed and always, all bound up tight from being angry all the time and stuff like that. I said, nope, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it wasn't just for me too. It was for people in my life. I didn't want to treat them like shit. I wanted everybody around me to have just as good of a life as I was having, or not that I was having, but that I wanted to have. And that's why I decided to change. And I did that 5 years where I subjected myself to this change, and it worked. It changed me.
This was the 5-year ritual that you attribute all this to.
Yep.
Could you give us a little more insight into what that entails, though? Like, my being, like, I believe in a lot of or practice a lot of Gnostic teachings. And to me, that smacks of Gnosticism or something adjacent to it.
I would say that if I had to choose a spiritual outlook to describe myself, while I'm not Gnostic, I would say that Gnosticism does come the closest. The whole symbolism of Abraxas, the God that is beyond anything knowable and unintelligible, not a he, not a she, not a it. It's unknowable. It's the source. It's the emanation. Whatever you want to call it. So the Gnostic philosophy is probably the closest thing I'd align myself with. So there is Gnosticism there, but at the same time, there was a lot of influence from Buddhism. Like I said earlier, the learning of the impermanence of life, understanding the limited time we have. There was the Hinduism. A lot of people don't realize that Shiva, Kali, all this, they are gods, but they're
evil or dark.
Well, they are dark, but there's a necessary darkness. Life is dark, Yeah. So it's don't worship it, but understand it. And if you understand it, you can get a better grasp of how to be. If you understand what true negativity is, you can then try to be as positive as possible. So anyhow, what is it specifically that you want to know about, say, those 5 years? Like,
well, I mean, everything, but I understand we don't have time to cover 5 years in an hour, but was there a pre-prescribed like a grimoire that you called it from, or is this completely of your own making?
It's of my own making. I like I said, I got really into mysticism, so I studied a lot of different, mystics from different religions, and tried to, without dropping out of society, because I had to pay rent and do my thing. I was going to adhere to as much of those different paths as possible. So I took up meditation. Like I said, I did fasts from food to water. I worked out so I could be, healthy. I tried eating differently. I tried to do everything that I could to curb my ego. One of the things that I didn't do for that time was I didn't celebrate my birthday. Mm-hmm. And someone that used to be a member of the Church of Satan, that's kind of like the biggest holiday, celebrating your birthday. So I decided to do the opposite. I decided I'm not going to celebrate myself, which is completely different than anything I would have ever done. So, like I said, not saying no. Then there were just other things. I tried different rituals. Are you familiar with Austin Spare?
Yeah.
I did the death posture every day, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day, to where it would exhaust me, to where I would fall into a heap on the floor. I tried all different. I did. Now people say, when I say this part, they're like, you did that shit for fun. I did a lot of different drugs, but it wasn't like coke and heroin. It was, I tried to use, I would do certain, hallucinogens and psychosomatic stuff to not party, but to sit still. And instead of dance around and have a good time, I would sit there and try to see what would happen with my brain, try to figure out, how to be a better person, how to change, and I would meditate on these things. So yeah, it was just a bunch of different. I decided to do 5 years, and it was just a bunch of smatterings of different rituals, and basically, like, every once in a while, whatever idea popped into my head, I said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try it. Like I said, one was a 30-day vow of silence. That was unbelievably difficult. I'm trying to think of some of the others that I haven't mentioned. I'm sure there are, but I can't think of any right now.
Because I'm drawing influence from everything from the Gnostics to Thelema to like Carlos Castaneda with the psychonaut bent of it. You were working up to that your whole life, and I too, I'm a drug addict. I'm a lifelong drug addict. I don't use my drug of choice any longer, thank God. Pot does help keep me level, but I have that tendency to overindulge and become self-destructive. And
I was right there with you. One of the lucky things that I'll admit, while I was an alcoholic, I was a drug user, but not a drug addict. I would go out drinking, and then if someone had a little bit of this, let's do a little bit of this. Someone had a little bit of that, let's do a little bit of that. So I was kind of like always floating around in drug circles and things like that. And I didn't have a problem where it took over, but I was lucky enough to understand, okay, I'm doing this a little too much, time to cut it out. For some reason, I have no idea why, I just could never do it with alcohol.
Alcohol has an inherent demon to it, though. That
it's probably the worst thing you could do. I mean, I'm sure.
I was a heroin addict, and I'm going to tell you right now, alcohol is the only drug that you can die from if you quit cold turkey, if you're a real alcoholic.
Yes, exactly. But here's the weird thing. I knew that you could get a stroke from going cold turkey. Yet, I not only didn't get that, I didn't even have DTs. It was unbelievable.
There's a reason for that.
Unbelievable. It just woke up one morning and gone. It was the strangest thing ever. Actually, here's what really happened. I went out with friends, and it was I forget if it was my first or second group show that I had in New York. It was a little gallery called Super Chief at the time. Now they're kind of huge in LA, but it was one of the first group shows that they had, and I got to be a part of it. And to congratulate me, somebody bought me a beer. One sip, and I was like, "Nah, I don't want this, thank you." And I put it down, and I've never picked up a drink since then.
That's incredible.
No, I still to this day I don't know how I didn't suffer any of the drawbacks or withdrawals from it, but it happened, and I couldn't be happier.
Well, I mean, to me, that's just a testament to, people always say, "Oh, it's mind over matter," but in all honesty, the human mind is a very spiritual thing. It's attenuated to the ether, in my opinion, because it is, it's just a hunk of, skin, but
Right.
it's animated by electricity, which, is energy, which that can neither be created nor destroyed. So it's part of, the ethereal. It's part of the infinite. If you harness it correctly, this means nothing. It's nothing.
You're a flesh mechanism, held together by bone, structurally held together by bones, but you're being driven by your nervous system. You're more inside than you are outside. But like what you're saying when you said, electrons and stuff like that, that's one of the things that I think I did by changing everything. One of my biggest influences is, I don't know if you're familiar with the author, Robert Anton Wilson.
Yeah, I am actually.
He basically, one of his ideas is you have to change the neural pathways. And that's one of the things that I think I did. If you feed this part of the brain too much, you're going to get this. You got to start trying to move it elsewhere, make other neurons, spark and get things moving in different parts of the brain. And I think that's what I did by doing what I did, because everything that I had done those 5 years was so different than what I normally would have done. So I had to use different parts of my brain. And by doing that, different pathways started functioning, and it just helped me work things out in a different way.
I'm going to ask you something. I don't think I've ever asked anyone this on this show, and I have vivid memories of it from when I was a kid. Do you have memories of having the ability to hover downstairs and stuff like that from when you were very young?
I have a lot of strange things that have happened, but I wouldn't say something like that.
I grew up in a house that was very active, but I have vivid, and I do mean vivid, memories of having the ability to not have to use my legs to ascend and descend staircases. That
would be a dream come true for me.
It's very strange. But
floating or hovering, that would be so freaking awesome. But no, it's something I can't think of anything like that.
Well, what was your youth strange then?
I remember once reaching for a glass, and I forgot what exactly happened, but I felt this intense energy in me where I was just practically humming. And I remember reaching for a glass, and it was almost like I had a force field around me, and the glass kind of moved away as I reached for it. That was one of the weirdest things that's ever happened. And let me tell you something. One thing I don't believe in is ghosts. I can understand if people have seen them. There's quite possibly, when it comes to, say, like someone died violently, I could understand maybe there's an energy there that the person left behind or something like that. But I don't believe like their spirit is trapped here.
No, I don't either. And I'm going to tell you, if you've a couple times I've mentioned this on the show. I had an imaginary friend when I was a kid that used to do shit that I definitely did not want it to do. I don't believe in ghosts the way people perceive them to be ghosts. I believe that they are something that has always been in that form.
Okay, I could see that.
An energy, some kind of energy that always existed as it is, and mimics humans if it feels the need to, in order to, scare people or whatever they're after.
Right. I understand.
But the home that I had grown up in, I don't know if it was on a ley line or what, but everyone, the second they walked into that home, got the feeling of impending doom. The second they got in there, and it got to
that I'm familiar with. I mean, I've one of the things that I love about my job, I go throughout all different parts of the country, and I remember walking through the desert where I could suddenly hit a spot and it's like ice cold in that spot. And for the desert, that's like near impossible, but I could feel it. So I get what I completely believe in that. But here's the reason why I bring up ghosts and how or why I don't believe in them. I don't know, because of this experience. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I was living in Spain. I don't remember what I did, but I got in trouble. And my mother scolded me. She basically told me, go to your room. And she put me in my room and turned off the lights and closed the door. And I remember it was like the afternoon, but it was still unbelievably dark in my room. I was laying in bed feeling very sad and regretful for what I had done. And all of a sudden, at the foot of the bed, this bright light emits, and there is, I'm not kidding, a knight in full armor standing at the foot of my bed, and he holds out his hand and says, in Spanish, don't worry about it. And gone. And to this day, I still wonder, for someone who doesn't believe in ghosts, what the hell was that? What the hell? What happened? Was that my imagination? Was that like, did I really form that? Did it really happen?
I mean,
what? Did I fall asleep and that was a dream? It's like, what the hell was that?
Well, I'm for someone who I have sleep paralysis. I've had it my whole life. It's supposed to go away at puberty. Never did. And I know I didn't have sleep paralysis at this moment. My first memory of life, I talked about it one other time with Tara Van Flower from Lycia.
Lycia, yeah.
Basically what had happened was I was laying in bed. The home that we lived in when I was very young, my bedroom was at the top of the stairs. There was no door. It was a semi-spiral staircase. And my parents and my godfather and his wife were downstairs drinking. I was probably 3. And if I were to just lay in bed and look at the wall, I could kind of map what everyone was doing downstairs because of the way the shadows were being cast from through the light. Right. So if my mom or dad were to walk by, I recognized their shadow. If my godfather and Faith, his wife, were to walk past, I could map it all. I could hear them having a good time. And very suddenly, a shadow that was far too dark to have been cast from downstairs because they were very thin shadows. This was a very dark shadow. And it floor to ceiling in this home, old coal miner's home from Pennsylvania. It was probably like maybe less than 6 feet tall. But it was humanoid in shape, and it extended its arm like this and went like that, faster and faster, until I was so filled with dread that I screamed as loud as I could.
Right.
The lights were controlled at the bottom of the stairs. My parents turned the lights on. My father comes bounding up in a fit of drunken anger because I was screaming and whacked me across the face. And I don't remember anything again for 5 years of my life.
Huh.
From 3 until 7, I remember that and only that.
I don't know why, but I have a fascination with shadows.
I do too.
They're, very simple things. It's just you casting something from whatever light is emitting from, a different direction. But there's something about it that's just, it's always fascinated me for some reason. As a matter of fact, when I was like 13, I was really into Dungeons and Dragons.
Me too.
I decided to create my own monster manual with my own, these monsters that I made up. And my very first one was because I saw this strange shadow that looked like a dude with horns. And I decided to call it a shadow kid. And that became my first monster, this shadow creature that was... And I think that that's where my fascination with shadows and I guess the absence of light came from.
Which is what I find really fascinating here is like we're probably of comparable ages when these both things occurred, and what you had seen was something full of light and honor as casting itself out as a knight.
Right.
Whereas I'd seen something
opposite.
Quite the opposite.
Right.
It definitely set up a trajectory for me. For many years.
I could see that. I could see that.
And certainly, my involvement with the Church of Satan as well was probably, a direct relative of that. But I'd always had the feeling that there was never anything human in any of this stuff, and any of the spiritual experiences that I'd ever been around, been involved in. I never thought to myself, this used to be a person. This is this person's soul.
Right.
In my heart of hearts, I believe that once we shed this, we become a part of something else completely.
I agree.
That only makes sense. Where does electricity go once it hits anything on the earth? It goes to ground. That's its nature. So it's collecting somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I believe in. With the energy that runs us, that we are powered on, that energy meets up with greater energy. That's it.
And when I was a very small child, I probably like 12, 13, I started to really believe that our idea of God is us as a collective. Why do we get lonely? Because we're supposed to all be together somewhere. We are that being. We are that the thing that the image we were created in. We're in that image because we created it, because we're a part of a collective. We're supposed to be.
Actually, there's a lot of occult books lately that are covering the topic of alienation, and that we are suffering from alienation due to this desire for this, whatever you want to call it, the source or whatever, and our detachment from it. It's a subject that I've lately become very interested in. I just purchased a book. I forget the author's name, but the book is called Anarch, and that's like one of the main topic of the book, our alienation from like a greater thing, and why we're suffering so much because of this alienation. And he kind of makes it a little bit political. Well, he goes to different avenues, but he thinks that that's one of the, how Marx, one of his big ideas was alienation. Mm-hmm. And he says that that's where the beginnings of that idea, that's where it stems from. He focused too much on the people that run his life rather than what is behind all of that. And I find that very interesting. I'm pretty fascinated by that.
I mean, if you're to trace back all of the bad decisions or horrible things that either of us have committed, made, whatever, it was always due to ego, anger.
Oh yeah,
And,
definitely.
It's passion gone awry. What causes that?
Misfocus of energy.
Misfocus of energy. 1
You're-
million fucking percent.
You're focusing on the wrong thing. More of the physical aspect, more of the here and now, what you are experiencing right then and there, what you want, your desires right then and there, instead of trying to whether it's living a better life, whether it's focusing on better things, all that. That's a lot of why a lot of the mystics are about mysticism is about destroying the ego, because that's what drives you to all the wrong things.
Yeah, I mean, focusing on the self. I mean, we are we're a very flawed vessel, and to have an ego about this, about the corpus, about the everything about what it is to be a person. You shouldn't really have too much pride in that, because it's a dime a dozen. It's banal,
especially when it comes to the silliest of things like skin color and things like that. So
it doesn't even
figure.
I've come to a point in my life where if someone even makes a racist joke, I don't get angry anymore. I don't rail against them, because they all know how I feel if they're around me more than 15 minutes anyway. But I've learned to just diffuse it with a look. All I do is just look at them like,
yeah,
you're that fucking dumb. Like, that's really you right now. Do better.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice, honey. Keep going. So I think to kind of like, wrap everything up in a bow here. What is your main goal as far as self-development is concerned? What are you shooting towards? What is that ultimate for you to kind of like really compact it all?
I think just to stay on the path that I'm on, to try to be, no matter how good of a this, a lot of people are going like, oh, this self-righteous bullshit. But to be honest with you, no matter how good of a person you are, you can always be a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I believe that I'm just going to keep working on myself, and I know that by working on myself, I help not only myself, but those around me. And the more I help and influence those around me, the more they can help and influence those around them, and on and on and on. And so long as I'm on the path that I'm on, stay creative, stay positive, stay healthy, I'm good. I'm doing well. I'm by no means rich. I have a job that I enjoy. I'm living a life that I enjoy, of course, just like everybody else. The odd speed bump here, the bad day at work there. That's to be expected. But still, keep your wits about you. Try to, if you're going to have ethics and standards, fucking stand behind them. That's one of my biggest problems with a lot of the stuff that's going on today. People, they stand behind these morals that they don't follow. Hypocrisy reigns. So just don't be a hypocrite. Be creative. Be a good person. I try to eat well, but still eat delicious things. Have fun with what you put in you, but make sure that you're not killing yourself. And stay active, stay creative. It's basically it. So long as I keep on this path, I know I'm going to live a happy life. And the last probably like it's been a lot to get to where I am, but I have to say that the last 2 years have been amazing. I have a smile on my face almost every day, and sometimes I have to stop and say, "You look like a goofus." You're just walking around with this shit-eating grin on your face, like da 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 da. But hey, man, I can't help it. I'm really happy. So long as I follow the path that I'm on, I think I'm gonna stay this way until, of course, the inevitable. Somebody's gonna pass. Somebody, maybe even I get sick. Who knows? Whatever. I'll face it when I get to it. But for now, having the time of my life.
And obviously, it seems to me that you feel like once you've shed that, you're shuffled from this mortal coil, that's nowhere near the end. To me,
we'll see. I have my beliefs, but who knows if I'm wrong. I'll take it when when I get there, I'll deal with it then.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm here. I'm happy. Let's keep that going.
And that's the best advice anyone could give anyone else, regardless of spirituality.
I hope so.
This has been, normally I don't know what to expect. I kind of had a sneaking suspicion that this was going to get deep fast, and I am not disappointed.
Cool. I'm glad.
I'm really glad you came on. I hope you'll come on again. And
I'm really glad you had me. If you ever want me back on, of course, I'd be happy to. I really appreciate you giving me the time to speak my mind, and you've given me just as much as I've given you. I love talking with people. I love shooting the shit. I love getting deep. So long as it doesn't turn into an argument.
Well, I know you've had some less than fantastic experiences with this sort of thing. I'm sure you've had good times, but I know you've had not the best of times. I hope I at least rank somewhere in the.
Oh yeah, this has been great. I've had a lot of fun talking to you.
I appreciate that. I have as well, and let's talk again soon. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Peter.
Good to see you, my friend.
Same.
Take care.
You too.
And there you have it, folks. My discussion with Adel Souto. Not much I can add to this, as we've sort of said it all in this episode. We left it all on the table. And as you heard, he will be back for another round with yours truly. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I know it's a long one. We've been trying to get away from the long ones, but I think this content deserved this length. Thank you all so much for being a part of this experience. He's been Adel. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Night, everybody.